Hello and welcome to the second in our series of interviews for the Hamblin Vision. In this episode, I'm joined by EFT practitioner Jeanine Hanneman. Jeanine talks to us about her background in emotional freedom technique and was explaining to me after the interview how regular tapping and EFT can help reduce stress hormones in the body, such as cortisol, which can improve our immune system. We hope you enjoy the interview. Hello and welcome to this conversation. We're doing this series of conversations at the Hamblin Vision, and joining me today is Jeanine Hanneman. Hanneman. Am I saying that right, Jeanine? I always get my tongue twisted.
That is correct. Yes. Hello, Mike. Thank you for inviting me to come along and be interviewed.
That's great. No, I'm really glad to talk to you. So Jeanine and I met on Zoom about, was it September we did that?
Yeah, September.
Jeanine is an EFT practitioner, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And Jeanine led a fantastic workshop on Zoom for that in September and has done all sorts of things for the Hamblin Vision over the years, a long connection and association with the Hamblin Centre. And so we're really pleased to welcome Jeanine to this is actually the second in our series of talks and conversations with practitioners and with teachers, with authors, with whoever really. So if you're watching this and you would like to have a chat with me on Zoom, we'll record that and then share it with our members in our email list and on our social media and on our blog. So I thought, Jeanine, it'd just be nice just to talk a little bit about your practice as an EFT practitioner, but also very much like we did in the workshop from the perspective of everyday practical spirituality. I think what you're offering is deep work, but it's also very practical and it's something that people can do. And in my own experience of following spiritual teaching, studying, going on retreats, silent retreats, reading books, meditating for hours, I found that for me personally, nothing really changes until I start to do something differently in my everyday life. And I see a lot of people get just stuck in theory and thinking about things and talking about things and having a mental attitude towards things, but then nothing changes because they're not doing anything new. So I think what you're offering with this therapy and with this practice is transformational, and in the end that's I think what spiritual life is all about, change and transformation. So welcome, and perhaps if I how should we kick off if I ask you, how did you get into EFT? What was the starting point for you?
I think the starting point for me was my mother. My mother was a therapist. Her name was Joan Brownrigg, and there are many Hamblin people who knew my mum and in fact actually had balances with her. She worked for Touch for Health, and she was one of the founder members of the Touch for Health Centre, which is still going ahead. It's still just about surviving in Bognor Regis.
Right.
Touch for Health is based on a practice called with kinesiology. And kinesiology is a way of checking in with the body with a simple yes/no answer, whether you get a strong muscle or a weak muscle. And it completely changed my approach, my understanding about us as humans and how we work and everything. I think ever from a young age, I was very interested in healing, and I did once after school apply to become a nurse, but I decided I'd done enough studying and I wanted to have a bit more fun. So I didn't pursue a career in nursing. However, I did work for the NHS for 18 years. So I suppose you could say I was in the environment of healing in my career, in my interests. And it's always been a very deep something I feel I've chosen to experience this lifetime. So my mother used to have the Touch for Health works on a balance, and I used to go up and rock up on her table, and she used to do all these weird things with the muscle and just following the body, just tuning into the body, as she said, just tune into you and see what you need today. So I could go with a an emotional issue or a pain in my big toe or something, and suddenly find she's tweaking my ears. Very weird. And so that got me interested. And one of the things she started on was thought field therapy. And thought field therapy was the precursor to emotional freedom technique. And it was started by a psychotherapist called Roger Callahan, who was trying desperately to find a cure for his patient who had a water phobia. And he tried for years and years, or a long time, to try and find out what was actually behind the phobia. And at the same time, he was starting to practice or learn about Eastern philosophy and Chinese medicine and the acupuncture and the meridian system. And he suddenly had a thought, well, I wonder what happens if I ask her to tap on her stomach meridian, which is a point under the eye, while she's thinking of her water phobia. Because what he'd asked, he said, when you think about water, how does it make you feel? And she said, oh, I feel sick to the stomach. And so he said, well, just tap under your eye, which is here, the eyebrow point, under the eye. This is for fear, and this is on the stomach meridian. So she tapped and thought about, and within, I think he said 5 or 10 minutes max, this lady had completely lost her phobia of water, and she rushed outside, and the story goes there was either a swimming pool nearby or a lake or something, and she just went straight into the water and end of phobia. I mean, amazing. So I think he was as astounded as she was. This book is probably out of print now. It was called Thought Field Therapy, or no, 5-Minute Phobia Cure, I think was the original name. And so from there, Gary Craig took over, and he simplified the system. And then EFT, really, emotional freedom technique, developed from that. So I learned from the Gary Craig session training. I learned with an organization called Passion for Health in 2006. I got my certificate down in Portsmouth with a wonderful lady called Sandra Hilawi. And that started me on my journey. And I went for a 3-day workshop, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I just came with my stories and my emotions and my practices and my baggage, as we all carry our backpacks full of emotional baggage. And by the end of the weekend, I thought, oh my goodness, I feel so different. I'm not the same person I was when I started. And then I thought, what is going on here? So I decided to carry on. Just having attended the workshop, I then went on to become, get certified in it. So I've got a certificate as a practitioner. And I would say that ever since then, EFT has been part of my life. It's my go-to self-help tool because it's so simple and it's so easy and it's so profound and it works. And the only way I know it works is because I've changed so much through doing EFT. I now do some every night before I go to sleep, so I get a better night's sleep. If I'm anxious about going somewhere, I tap. If I'm in a traffic jam and I'm late for an appointment and there's a red light and you've got time and you're thinking, oh, how am I going to get there? Sit and tap. I mean, honestly, you can't. There's nothing you cannot tap on. But the science behind it, and science is now beginning to catch up with what energy medicine has been known for years, and the Chinese knew way back in the past, because Chinese medicine is one of the ancient forms of healing. And it's based on the meridian energy system, and the meridian energies are the meridians are pathways, energy pathways that flow through the body, this is where my mum came in with her work, because she had used to go to a treatment room and there were charts all over her, hanging on the walls of the 5 elements and the meridian pathways and everything. So this, to me, I learned through my mother, but I also learned for myself. So she helped me. She started me off on my journey. And it's thanks to my mom that I am where I am today. And I am a healer and I am practicing it because she helped me to develop my own skills. I don't do Touch for Health. I never did a Touch for Health course because it was so much easier and quicker to go and have balance with my mother. And I often think I wish I had, but it's okay because I've developed my own way based on what I learned through her. And I'm really, truly grateful to my mum for setting me on this pathway. So the way the meridians work is, I say, imagine you've got a map of England and you've got the roadway map. You've got the M roads, the A roads, and the B roads, and the country lanes, and the tracks. And in a way, our bodies are like that. These pathways, the highways, are just rivers of energy, flowing energy. So I liken them to rivers. So I say, okay, you've got a river. It starts as a stream, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and ends up into the ocean. And so along its journey of the water through that river, from the mountains all the way down to the ocean, it's on a journey. And therefore the force of the water going through its pathway it carves its own pathway. And then, you get boulders, you get silt builds up in the bottom, you get beavers making dams, you get trees that fall down and block, and you got logs of wood, and then you get things chucked into the bottom of the river, and they create a blockage, and therefore the river can't flow, and then there's a dam, and then the water collects, and then it stagnates, and then it creates, but that's what we're like. And so we have these pathways of energy that flow through us, because everything is life force energy flows through us. We wouldn't be here without life force energy. Everything on the planet has life force energy, whether it's a plant, an animal, everything, humans, rocks, everything that's alive on the planet is life force energy flowing through it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. And that energy is what keeps us surviving. It's our spirit, it's our consciousness. And so as a human being, we arrive on the planet and we decide to take on board this particular costume, as I call it. We're playing a role, we're on stage and we're acting a part. And we decided that this time I said, I'm going to be Jeanine. And I want to heal myself, and I want to learn how to heal myself. So I've got to find ways to do that. So EFT came along, and I've been using EFT, because what EFT does, it clears the blockages in my river. Because these are the emotions that we feel, like the negative emotions of, anger, fear, resentment, frustration, heartbreak, insecurity, vulnerability, very things that we experience day in, day out in all our lives. That's just energy. It's no more, no less than energy. We just give it a label, and then we hang on to the label, and then we say, oh, I'm really angry, this has happened to me. And then you feel it in your body and you get all upset, and and sometimes you can't speak it because you're almost, your throat gets clogged up, because you can't speak, because you're so emotional, and you just stamp your feet. And so we're just trying to get rid of the energy that's stuck there. And so EFT comes along, and we tap away on the end points of the meridians, which is points on the head, mainly on the face, the head, the hands, on the body, the upper body. And then those meridian endpoints are like the acupressure points from acupuncture. So with acupuncture, you have needles to release the energy and let the energy flow through better. With EFT, we use tapping. We use our finger points. So we literally tap. So for fear, as I explained earlier with the lady and her water phobia, you just tap here. And the only way to know it's working is to try it yourself, because I can tell you till I'm blue in the face, it's amazing, it's wonderful, but until you try it yourself, you're just going to say, yeah, it's a theory.
Exactly, and that's what's been powerful. I first came across it actually similar time in 2006, but in a book. And it's interesting that you mentioned kinesiology, because around about that time, so I was dealing with a very frightening diagnosis, illness in my life. And I was working for a company not far from here at the time. And a lovely lady called Jo Scott recommended. Well, actually, there was a few kind of coincidences around that time. So another colleague recommended that I speak to a lady down in Devon to do some radionics. So she did some distant healing on some hair that I sent her. And I was reading all these books. I was going to the doctor as well, and was having treatment at the hospital. So I was basically coming at it from all sides. I come from a kind of traditional Catholic family, not devout and very strict, but my mum was praying, all of my aunties were praying, so there was this huge effort. And one of the things I did was to engage in this radionics treatment, and then that led me to try kinesiology with Jo Scott over in Pagham. And I know that she's had an association, and her mother's had an association with the Hamblin Centre in the past as well. So I've had that experience of lying on the muscle testing, and the practical help that Jo gave me back then, like you need more vitamin B, really simple, straightforward things that I still do now. It helped me get through. I mean, it was a cancer diagnosis, so I had treatment as well with radiotherapy and chemo. So I needed all the help that I could get, and it really helped. And the emotional freedom technique, I've never been so good at the discipline with that. And we were talking a bit before we began recording about that, that it's quite hard sometimes to maintain a disciplined practice, to integrate it into our lives. But I think what you said about trying it and paying attention to what changes that's the kind of real, that's what makes the change, I think. So when you mentioned that lady with the water phobia and she tapped here, because I've often suffered with anxiety in the stomach area. I don't have it as much the past sort of 5 or 6 years, but sometimes it really leaps up there. And now I'm sort of more conscious and aware to recognize that it's related to what I'm thinking, and to what I'm imagining, either thinking about something in the past or projecting to something in the future. And I can see the connection much more clearly than I could before. But that really makes sense to me with this system of meridian energy lines in the body, that it can clear that blockage. Because I have felt that either through tapping, that you feel this sort of like, with me, it's not so much tension in the stomach, it's like nerves, like washing machine tummy, like you kind of feel like something bad's going to happen, that kind of really horrible swirly feeling. And I've experienced that dissipating through Reiki, which I think is a similar guiding of that flowing river. You talk about rivers of energy, and through tapping. So I think it's great to talk to you about this. And also something occurred to me when I was talking about discipline just then. It might be quite useful for people to hear a bit about what we were saying, because so when we first came on the call, Jeanine said to me, "Oh, have you been tapping?" And I was honest, and I said, "No, I haven't actually. I haven't been doing it." So the first thing to mention is that immediately I always feel like, "Oh, no, I haven't been doing what I said I would do." So it's like you feel guilty. But then also, it led me to think about the fact that we, all of us, explore different ways in which we can help ourselves, heal, improve our health, and particularly with emotional issues. They're huge, I mean, I've no doubt about the fact that the cancer that I had also was related to emotional problems that I'd had through my 20s, like the early part of my life. Yeah, there was a physical component to it, but I also felt there was an emotional component to it. And that it was all contributing to the same final, crescendo point of, well, this is here now, and this is a tumor, and it's in your mouth, and it's do or die. There was this crisis point of, well, I'm either going to live or I'm going to die. So for me, there was a real sense of, I surrendered to that initially. I was like, well, it's out of my hands. There's nothing I can do. And then it was a slow period of trusting that more and more and more. But I think we all often come across practices that we can do, and this series of conversations is about practical everyday spirituality. But it's interesting to me that so many of us come across a brilliant technique and even contact with a teacher like yourself, a therapist that we can go to, and we don't often do it. There's something that stops us. We have it's almost like we're given the tools and we don't use them.
Yeah, well, I would say that the question to ask yourself if that happens is how much am I invested in staying the way I am? And that is it's a very uncomfortable thing to actually ask yourself. How much? And you say, I'm not invested. I want to heal. I want to do it. I want to do it. And I say, yeah, really? Okay, then do it. Why don't you do it? I always say that energy hygiene is as important as dental hygiene. Now, you clean your teeth every night or twice a day, once a day, because your parents taught you to do that when you were a baby and, when you were a child. And, we do it without conscious thought. It's like a habit. EFT has to become like that. It has to be a habit. It has to become so much a part of your everyday routine that you don't even think you're not going to do it, because it's so important. And the truth is, you could be sitting at your office desk, you can be sitting in a meeting that is really, and you feel you want to say something, but I mustn't say that because, I'm not allowed, for whatever 101 reasons. We've all been in those situations when we're desperate and we're getting a bit irate by what somebody's saying. Instead of sitting there inwardly fuming, you sit and you very gently just tap on one point on your hand whilst you're just being with how you're feeling. And within a few seconds, when the person stopped talking, you'll suddenly find you'll do a sigh. And I'm doing it now. I'm actually sitting here tapping while I'm talking to you, just to show that I can just take a sigh and release. What you're doing is releasing energy. If you just step back and become a witness to yourself, then you'll have a better idea of what to do. And I agree. I spent when I first woke up to my spiritual journey, I read books for 10 years. I didn't do anything. I just read and read and read and read, and I couldn't get enough of it. I was just absorbing this information that kept telling me, oh, I know this. Oh, I recognize this. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It was like I was waking up. And then 10 years later, life puts me in a situation that, okay, now walk your talk, girl. You got the theory. Now you're into the practical exam. We've all been there. We've all been to school, We've all done the theory test. We've all done our written work. And now we're going to the oral exam. Or now we're going, we're going to, not that I was a chemist or did any lab work. Now you've got to prove it. Now you've got to prove that A equals B equals C, and etc. That's what EFT is about. You know what it does. You understand the principles. You get the fact that we're made of energy. You get the fact that we are we're spirit in human form. We're just, our bodies are just our vehicles for our soul to experience life on earth. And we are the ones in charge of that body. And therefore it's up to us to keep it in balance, to keep it in the healthiest place we can. And EFT is such a wonderful way of doing that. It's just one way, because you work with emotions, you work with the mental thoughts.
Yeah, there's something that I wanted you to talk about, because I think this is a really powerful component of EFT, and it's something that you demonstrated in the workshop that we did in September. So you mentioned Gary Craig, and at some point in the workshop you mentioned that and I love the fact that this is a therapy that's constantly evolving, that it's not stayed the same, that it's been added to by others, which is, how great things evolve, don't they? But you mentioned at some point in there that there was an introduction of some NLP scripting techniques, and is that right? Was there a sort of it's not NLP?
It's not. No, I don't know. I've never done NLP. There is a script. There is a script with. I learned, when you learn EFT, you will learn a script. And the basic behind it is that you focus what seems to be on the negative feeling. So even though I'm feeling upset by what's happening, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling angry, or whatever emotion you're bringing to you, you know, you're sitting down and something's happened and you're feeling all these emotions coming up. So you could say, even though I'm feeling so upset by what's happening, so what you're doing is also angry that this has happened to me. What you're doing is you're really allowing yourself to physically feel that energy in your body.
That was it. Yeah.
You feel the energy, so you're not denying it, you're not repressing it, you're not saying, oh, I mustn't feel that. No, it's the repression of all these emotions that creates the physical conditions that we have to suffer from. If we dive deeper into all our physical problems, there will be an emotional component. You're right, what you said about your diagnosis. There would have been an emotional component there, because there's emotion underneath every condition we do, because emotion is just an energy in motion, E plus motion. The energy is what creates the motion. And it all comes from a thought. Everything begins with a thought. Everything begins in the mind, but we feel what we put into the body because we give it energy, and therefore we experience it. And that's what creates our reality. But we're in charge of that. If we don't like it, only we can change it. Nobody out there is going to change it for us. We are responsible for changing our world, no one else.
I just thought that was so powerful in the workshop, and as you're saying it again there, it just feels so open, and I suppose the reason I like it so much, you know, that notion of you take whatever it is that you have been feeling really you're struggling with, you know, whatever it is, and acknowledging it. So even though I feel like this, I allow myself to relax or be free, or because I think that so often, well, first of all, it just it resonates with so many other approaches that I've tried in my life that I've got really good results from. So similar kind of thing in meditation, you know, speaking some kind of mantra that says, even though I'm finding this really difficult, I am willing to accept this situation. Or actually the one that really has helped me before from a teacher I've worked with for a number of years was, there is a place in my heart that is willing to accept this.
Yeah.
You know,
it's beautiful. It's so powerful. That's what's powerful. It's about acknowledging, and it's being okay with what is.
Yeah. And then that relaxation can come from that. But I really loved that element of your work, you know, your work with people, and during for those people watching, during that workshop, there was actually a small number of us, but Jeanine worked with all of us. Funny enough, we all had similar kind of issues, actually. It was just synchronicity. But I loved that, because what Jeanine can do as a practitioner is to, you know, tailor words, you know, a bit of scripting that you do as you tap through all of the different points, so that it's not just doing something by rote. You know, because I found even with that mantra, people can just say, there is a place in my heart that is willing to accept this. There's a place in my heart that's willing to love this. But when we say it with conviction, you know, and really, you know, real truth and real authenticity, you mentioned that earlier, you know, authentically showing up, you know, authentically, you know, being willing to change, let go of the stuff that's holding us back. I think that's a big part of it, isn't it?
It's so important to acknowledge and to accept we are where we're at without judgment, but give ourselves compassion, you know, and the amazing, and it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to feel upset. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay. We're human. That's why we're here, to feel our human emotions. But what we don't want to do is hang on to them, especially either, you know, even we don't want to hang on to the negative ones, because the negative ones are what makes us sick. So that's why EFT is so important, to use it daily and not let that energy build up in your body that ends up in a pain. Because there's a pain there, because there's a reason you're in pain. It's emotional pain. It's you know, we all want to be longing to be free of our pain. We are longing to be free of suffering.
Do you find can I ask you a question? Do you find in your sessions with people that that you work with them on an issue, and maybe that's for sort of 4 or 6 weeks or maybe longer, and that at some point they come to an understanding of why that blockage was there, and then they're able to release it completely.
Oh, absolutely. That is the beauty of EFT. You know, it takes you on a journey.
Yeah.
And you can start by tapping on one emotion, and then within a couple of rounds, you suddenly find another one's popped up. And then you follow that trail, and then you follow that trail, and then you think, oh, I remember this. And then you're off somewhere else. So it's like, you know, we have to become our own detectives.
Yeah.
You know, I always say, like, we always got, you know, we've got our little torch, and we're looking in the shadows, because what we're doing is this is just shadow work, which is very topical in, you know, we often read about, you know, embrace your shadow. Don't shove it. You've got to, we all have to acknowledge we have the shadow, we have the light. You cannot have light without dark. You cannot have dark without light. You know, it's a yin yang symbol. You know, you've got the black dot and the white, and you've got the white dot and the black. It's all part of the same. It's just what we need to do is to bring ourselves into balance. And EFT helps us to stay in balance in our bodies so that we can show up. We can find that strength. We can stay centered in our core. At the same time, acknowledging when we get taken off track, when suddenly we're knocked off center. And the thing that knocks us off center is fear. All our negative emotions, fear is at the bottom of the pile. No matter what is above it, fear is at the bottom. Could be fear of survival, fear of safety, fear of I don't feel safe. Oh my gosh, I don't feel safe, help. You know, we're on the planet as a human being. We need to feel safe on our planetary home, and the world at the moment is chaotic. So, you know, none of us truly, I would have said, feel safe. If we're really 100% honest with ourselves, I would think majority of people on the planet today are not feeling safe in their homes or not feeling safe in their bodies. And so that is why only we can make ourselves feel safe, because safety comes from within us. It's that safety, security of knowing I am source energy. I'm connected to my source. I'm grounded on the earth. The earth is my home, and I'm okay. And if I'm not okay with that, I'm going to actually be okay with not being okay, because I don't want to pretend I'm not okay if I'm not feeling good. I don't want to not, you know, I don't want to repress it. But what EFT does, it goes into the negative story for 2 or 3 rounds. So we really feel it. We really get into the story, and we have a dialogue. That's why there's no particular script, because only you know what's going on in your world that you want to get rid of. Only you know how you're feeling. Nobody else can say that. So when I'm doing a sort of a talk or a workshop, you know, I'm very generic. I say all these emotions, but you bring your story to the table. And therefore, that's what's the power. At the end of 5 minutes, you'll feel a sense of relief. So we always score it, you know, 10 out of 10 is maximum. It's called the SUD score. 0 is absolutely no problem. I'm absolutely fine with everything. We always want to get down to 0. But, you know, so we start, could be 10 maximum, red light, high alert, bing, 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 you know, going off. Take a breath. Give yourself permission to sit down. Take a breath and start tapping. You'll find within minutes, you'll feel better. You'll feel relief. The idea is to find relief. And if you can't get down to 0 in one go, that's okay. Just keep going until you get there. It may take a while. It may take more than one session. It may take 5 weeks. It may take 5 months. It may take 5 years. All I know is you'll get there. But you said at the beginning about we have all these tools. We read, you know, we read the books. We go on the workshops. We go on the retreats, and we come back with all this. Yeah, I'm really going to do it. And then we get home and we carry on a life, and you think, oh dear. I'll tell you the reason for that. Because you have a choice. You can choose to continue to do what you learned in the book or the workshop, or a teacher or somebody came to you and gave you a great bit of advice. You say, I can choose to take that on board and see if it and give it a go. Or I can choose to ignore it. if you choose to ignore it, I would say then you've got to say, well, what's my resistance to healing? Because they're not willing to do it is resistance.
Like what you said earlier, in some way we're still getting something from that dysfunction. Like if there's a payoff somewhere that we're not aware of, that we're not conscious of, that is just, you know, subconsciously still taking us down that same path, you know. And I know for me, whenever I've made a sort of really big but permanent change, is I reach a point where I realize I know where that leads. Like I've been down that little road so many times. My grandmother is from Belfast. She had all these fantastic phrases. They were all really funny. And one of them, which means the same thing, where I've walked that road before and I know where it leads and I didn't like where it led, so I'm just not going to go down there anymore. You know, I've reached that point a number of times with certain things in my life. There is still lots of things that I'm clinging on to for whatever reason. But she had this wonderful phrase, which usually meant if somebody wanted to sort of convince her to do something that she knew was a load of rubbish and she didn't want to do it because she'd been burnt before, she'd say, "Oh, I've been to your wee shop before." Meaning, like, you know, been in that wee shop before and I didn't like it, I'm not going again. So that always makes me laugh. But it's true, right? You know, that we get to a stage where we for whatever reason, and for me it often seems that it's got to get to level 10. The sound's got to go up really loud. I've got to be so uncomfortable to make that change, because I think you're right. And actually being honest about that and saying, well, do you know what, I'm still getting some payoff from the illusion or the dream, or, you know, some people talk about you know, we're in this sort of, when we're trapped in our identity or trapped in this idea that we're separate from source, that it's a bit like being in a very luxurious hotel room, like, or luxurious prison. You know, like we're in bondage. We're you know, we're sort of enslaved to the idea that everything we want is out there. It's separate from us. You know, we're not connected to source. But it's like being in a prison, but a very, very luxurious one, because we can still play with all the forms of the world. You know, I'm going to be successful, or have this, or do that, or, you know, indulge in all those things, whatever, which is of course a different, you know, self-destructive thing. But I think that you're right, that there comes a time when we are ready, and in a sort of funny kind of way, it's almost like that's not even to do with us on some level, isn't it? Like it comes in.
Well, they say you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink until they're so thirsty that they think, well, if I don't drink, I'll die. And sometimes we have to get to that point where it is do or die. And the other thing to acknowledge also is that it doesn't matter whether you do or you don't do it, because your soul doesn't mind how long it takes you to get there. If you don't do it this lifetime, there's always the next one. I've come to the point of saying, I don't want to come back and do it again, because I've done enough. You know, I want to do as much healing as I can in this lifetime, because I am just so tired of carrying all this baggage with me, and I'm really going to leave it behind me this time. And the truth is, we are very attached to our comfort zones. They're very familiar territory. And our brains have been wired all our lives to show up in a certain way. And it's only when we get to a certain stage in our life that we realize we can choose to not do that anymore. And I think that's the point where so many of us now have reached. I know I've reached it a long time ago, and I know you, from what you've said, have reached it as well. And you're almost at that stage, well, I could actually ramp up a bit and go to the next level. So all I could say is do some tapping on, even though I'm so resistant to tapping. You know, I can throw tapping at anything, even though I'm so resistant to tapping. Why am I, you know, be curious. Why am I resistant to tapping? Why am I resistant to doing what I learned at that workshop that was so empowering?
I think
why am I not willing to do that, to continue that? And the reason is because your habit body is used to it. And what you're trying to do is introduce a new a new way of being, and that does take time. It does take practice. They say for EFT especially, and things like that, when you're working on changing the neural pathways in the brain, you do it for 3 weeks religiously. So just give yourself, if you want to, test it out, Mike, on yourself, I'll challenge you to show up in 3 weeks' time, having, choose. I'm just saying, and offering you an invitation to try it for 3 weeks and see what happens. And if, on one particular issue, or anybody who's listening to this recording, if you have an issue going on in your life that you really want to change, do some tapping for 3 weeks, 5 minutes a day. It's not a lot to ask, is it? And you could actually change your life, and you could actually be in a better place, and you could actually feel free of that old habit that you really don't want. And I often say it's like an old coat that I really, really like, but it's really outworn, it's full of holes, and it's ragged, but it feels so familiar, I don't really want to throw it away. But you could, okay, I'll keep my coat and hang it on the peg, but I'm going out to buy myself a new one. That's what you're doing with EFT.
And I mean, personally, I think I will just come to you.
Or just come to me, and I will give you that encouragement, because
I really do, because I mean, for me, at the stage I'm at in my life, and I know that lots of people experience this too, is that there are certain things I know I need help with now. I've always been so ridiculously well, actually it's not true in some ways, but there are lots of areas in my life where I'm quite stubbornly independent, and I go, I can do this because I've got the knowledge. I sometimes think I've had these experiences and it's opened me up to so many insights. I should know. I kind of, in a way, I don't give myself enough, I don't know. I don't give myself enough, what's the word? Give myself enough of a break. I think, well, all this, Mike, you shouldn't even be here struggling with these things you were struggling with, because you've had this incredible experience. So, but actually, I just think it's really good to also admit sometimes that we need help, and that we're not, no man's an island. We're all here together. And I love just talking to you. It seems you're just a natural healer. I just think that that's what the story you told about your mum, and that your journey to becoming, that you wanted to be a nurse and it didn't happen for whatever reason, but yet here you are, literally, and healing people just by being with them. That's my opinion, that just sitting here talking to you, I can feel, nice, feelings in my body, and feeling relaxed and at ease. And I just think that for my money, I'll be booking some sessions with you, because I think sometimes we just need to work with somebody.
You're right. And I think the other thing that's important to acknowledge is that voice that says, oh, well, I should be able to do this on my own, is only your ego. And that's part of your resistance. But just be kind to our egos are very important. We need our egos. They've been set up so that they keep tripping us up. And they trip us up because they like to be in control. And so the ego that says, yeah, you should be able to do that. Yeah, you should be able to do it. But the only word that says should, must, have to, or, that you can tell by your language, which is that the voice from my heart, or is it the voice from my mind? And if it's a voice from your heart, it would say, yes, Mike, you really can do this on your own, but it's okay to ask for help as well, and get somebody to really support you in this journey, so you don't have to do it on your own, because there's people out there who can really help you and get you over the next hump of your bridge, for instance, or anybody else who's listening to this replay.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not. So this, so what's great about these conversations is that I think that hopefully anybody watching, they can find this illuminating, and also healing, So I think that'd be a good place to wrap up our conversation, actually, Jeanine. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's great talking to you. I mean, Jeanine and I spoke for half an hour before we pressed the record button, and that was so nice. And if anyone was wondering, I still vape, which has nicotine in it. So that was the issue that we were talking about. So that's probably what I will be booking some sessions to come you for help with. It's something that I've struggled with all my life, all my adult life. So thank you so much, Jeanine. Now, do you have a website, Jeanine, so that we can say to our...
I do have a website. Do you want me to put it in the chat?
Can you just tell us what it is, because people might...
Yeah, it's just JeanineBrownrigg.co.uk. Brownrigg is my maiden name.
That's Brownrigg.
BROWNRIGG. Yeah, and it's JeanineBrownrigg.co.uk. On my website, it tells the story, my story, from Argentina, second generation. And I grew up there, and I came to England when I was a child, really traumatized by my journey. And I've been taking a lifetime to heal. And I wrote a book. My mother asked me to write a book about her life story, which I have published in 2020, called Pioneering Spirit. And that includes my mother's story as a healer and the Touch for Health Centre, and what happened with her. And then I talk about a bit about my own journey. So it's on the website, plus the other modalities I use. So yes, thank you, Mike, for allowing me to come here. And I really enjoyed talking to you. And I wish you well on your journey, and anybody else who's listening. And I'm available for any EFT practices or just a chat. Thank you.
With Jeanine, and we'll be doing at the Hamblin Vision, we'll be doing some more workshops or in the coming months, probably in the spring. We'll may do some in the new year as well, with Jeanine. In fact, the new year would be a great time, wouldn't it, for after Christmas, when we all start
the resolutions. Yeah, the resolutions. We set our intention, and then very soon they fall away. Yeah, don't worry.
Exactly.
I do that as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's great, Jeanine. Thank you so much for joining with us. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please do tune in to Jeanine's website. So that's JeanineBrownrigg.co.uk. And the book, just remind us the name of the book.
Pioneering Spirit. I've got one here.
Let's see a copy of it. Pioneering Spirit. Sounds fascinating, especially look at that beautiful cover.
Pioneering Spirit, an Anglo-Argentine story of my ancestors, my mother, and me. So it takes you on an ancestral journey, because I truly believe also that we are here to heal our ancestors, and when we heal ourselves, we do help release the timeline. I've done a lot of work with my ancestral lineage, and I know that's part of the work I'm here to do, or at least not here to do. Volunteered, signed up, said I'd do it. Yes, I'll do it.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much. And
thank you, Mike. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and wish you well, and all the Hamblin Vision too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening and for watching. If you'd like to connect with Jeanine, you can do so at her website, which is www.JeanineBrownrigg.co.uk. And if you'd like to find out more information about the Hamblin Vision, you can visit our website at thehamlinvision.org.uk. Thank you.